Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Bethesda Sabbath Fellowship. Our old building is locked. We've been meeting with another fellowship in the St. Paul area, and that pastor just died. So these are interesting times. I feel sorry for his family, and I'll mention his name in a minute here. We do the philosophy of eschatology. We know what you need to know, what's going on, your reality, our existence, the thought behind the thought. We try not to be disparate. We're Bethesda Sabbath Fellowship, and today's session is on death. How do you deal with massive amounts of death and suffering? What if it's actually a huge number? And how do we deal with that? I think you need to start preparing for that, for the amount of death that could potentially happen in the next 18 months, say. So, if anyone suffers for being Messianic, for believing in Messiah, let him not or her not be ashamed, but let them bring glory to God by the way they bear his name. For the time has come for judgment to begin. It begins with the household of God. And if it starts with us, what will be the outcome for those who are disobeying God's good news? If the righteous is barely delivered, where will the ungodly and sinful end up? Wow. Think about that. If the righteous are barely delivered, where will the ungodly and sinful end up? So let those who are suffering according to God's will entrust themselves to a faithful Creator by continuing to do what is good. That's 1 Peter 4:16 through 19. Judgment begins in the household of God. What does that mean? Well, in my particular community of people that are dealing with, say, Russ Dizdar is more into spiritual gifts and spiritual warfare. Oh goodness, why am I blanking on his name now? Rob Skiba, and others. We're losing friends left and right that are leaders in these movements. We're losing them left and right, people. Okay, so what time is it? We're seeing evangelical deaths. And as I mentioned, the pastor named Lauren died just recently, and a friend named Joni was a missionary until they both had cancer. They both died on November 10th. Both died on November 10th, 2021. About a year and a half ago, I lost two friends, Garth and Mitch, on about the same time frame of March 6th. It wasn't exactly the same time, but it was pretty close. So two of my witnesses, we'll call them, died this week. These are all godly people. I will not cast any dispersions against them because I believe they were all godly people and doing God's work and doing whatever they could, for the kingdom. They're dead. But judgment begins at the house of God. I noticed the deaths last year, 2020, early there, and now two on November 10th. Just interesting. So then I have this woman named Steph from Australia that is preaching a message that things are going to get very, very bad, that we will not be going into the final 7 years. We will be going into a time like the tribulation, but not there yet. This is not the end. So we're really jumping into the fullness of the third horseman, and then the fourth horseman is coming. And some people are saying it's already open. I can't prove that. I'm seeing death, but I'm not quite seeing the amount of death. Well, I'm seeing a lot of leaders' death. Like it would start with the household of God first, and then it would cause death to other people after that. She's predicting wars will break out among the nations, fires, God's fire too, which is a good thing. Mighty uprising, food shortages at hand, and she's talking about horrific stuff that's going on in New Zealand and her area. I'm blanking on the name of the man that runs that area, but we we have a new name for it. I'll come up with it by the end of the video because it's actually on the screen at the end. So this is from Jerry Golden. This is on the Steve Quayle website based on January 6th of 2019. It was a vision. The smell was so bad that it covered my nose and my mouth. It smelled like death everywhere. I could hear people crying and others fighting with each other, and gunshots were coming from every distance. Faces were dirty. Kids were hungry. Gangs of men and women were walking down the street carrying guns and knives. It looked like an EMP had hit because the buildings were still there. It's just that the people were hungry, tired, angry, and he didn't know if it was everywhere or not. Smoke and fire everywhere he looked. Buildings were destroyed. The smell was even worse than the first place. A strong, strong, strong smell of death mixed with chemicals. It was horrible. He thought it was the winter or possibly the beginning of winter, but he doesn't know if this vision was of the fourth seal time frame or of the Great Tribulation. What we're going into is not the Great Tribulation, people. We're going into another seal, and it's going to be ugly. But that doesn't mean that, well, it helps you to prepare for the Great Tribulation, because it'll be even worse than this. We do the philosophy of the end of days. We're dealing with death in this particular video, but we try to give you the Bible accurately. We try to interpret prophecy. We try to interpret the news. I believe that we are entering into this time frame. Now it'll be more than 1.94444 billion deaths, because we have increased in population from 7.7777 million people. Billion, rather. The deaths, according to the fourth seal, come through 4 different reasons. The Ramphea, which is a supernatural sword, you could call it the word of God. It cuts both ways. Drought, which is Limo. Death, which is Thanatos, which is the name of the fourth seal horseman. And Hades follows after him. And then biological warfare is the final one, which is Therion, which is happening right now. You're seeing it. The fourth seal again, and he opened the seal fourth, and I heard the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a chloros hippos, or hippos chloros, technically. That is a pale green. Chloros is always green. It could be similar to chlorine gas, or liquid chlorine. It's going to be kind of greenish yellowish, like death would look. And the one sitting on it, the name of him was Thanatos. That means death. Kai Ho Hades. Hades is following after him. So in the Hebrew, this would be Met, or Mot, and Sheol is the term in the Hebrew for Hades. And those two, so that's Isaiah 28:15, if you want to look that up at some point in time. So you'll just have an idea that there's a covenant with death at that point in time in Isaiah 28:15. And was following after him, or with him, was given them authority, exousia, which in the Greek means it's a delegated authority. It is given by God to this horseman to over a fourth of the earth. Now, there's no comma there in the Greek. It isn't over a fourth of the earth, big comma. No, it's a fourth of the earth, gay, apaktonai, which is to kill. So it goes right straight into the fourth of the earth to kill. With the Ramphea, once again, I mentioned that it's a supernatural sword. With Limo, which is famine. With Thanatos, which is plague, or just death. And with the Therion of the earth. That's biological warfare, people. That's what's coming right now. It just feels like it. But it's coming from other directions, too. Now we're going to go into people that are telling us that about 2 billion people may die. So this is Dr. Robert Malone, who was involved in inventing the mRNA gene editing, and he's saying the jab is all planned. They're using lies. It's complete totalitarian control, mass depopulation, and he's saying 1 in 4 will die. This is 2 billion over a 10-year period. That's what they're saying, over a 10-year period. And then other people hang on, but get worse. Was HIV added to this particular disease? Who knows? But that it's acting like that. This is Dr. Zev Zelenko. He seems to be a Lubavitch. He's an Orthodox Jew. He's suffering from cancer and dying. He's saying it's human sacrifice. Worldwide mass psychosis by increasing isolation and fear. Massive eugenics plan, bioweapon, child sacrifice. If we follow the advice of the global leaders, the Bill Gates of the world and people like that, 7 billion people need to be jabbed. Then the death rate will be 2 billion people. So this is my second person that's a doctor saying 2 billion people, which matches with Revelation 6:6-8. Then this is on the right-hand side, Mike Whitney. He's saying it is a poison death shot. And so how do you cull 7 billion people? Well, this is how you get rid of 2 billion people. This lady is an Italian doctor, and she said it takes about 18 months, and then you'll start learning about it because of what's in there and what's happening within our bodies, you'll see more cancers. And we're seeing more cancers. This is Dr. Michael Yaden. He worked for Pfizer, and he was a VP. He thinks it's a mass murder, depopulation, weapons. He's not predicting a number specifically, but we've got other people saying 2 billion. And so there's no justification in his mind. It's this is depopulation weapons designed to enslave and kill. So it's just sick. Now, this is Sadhu Sundar Severance. Some of you don't like him. It doesn't matter because we have lots of other people saying that this is horrific. Another thing worse than the CV is going to come. It'll make this CV look like child's play. It will sting people like a hornet stinger. It will begin to sting in the blood vessels. It will cause great amount of fatalities. A year is appointed for you to prepare. We've had that time frame. At that time, when the worst the CV plague sweeps around the world, upon those who fear God and keep His commandments, they'll be protected. So this is a good time to fear God. Good time. Always a good time. These are articles from a few different spots. One is Mike Whitney again. This is from Charles Hugh Smith, and so it's more of a survey of the excessive deaths, just the amount of deaths that the mortuaries are noticing. They're growing so quickly, and so that's his chart on the side there showing how badly it's going in terms of deaths. So this is an article by Charles Hugh Smith. 8 reasons why scarcities will increase rather than evaporate. The private jet crowd is, running around telling us to buy electric vehicles, but they're wasting power with their private jets. So anyway, the 8 are resources are being depleted globally, so there's no longer enough supply to meet the rising global demand at affordable prices. Okay. Number 2, exporting nations restrict exports to meet their own rising domestic demand. Yes, it's irritating that our oil, cobalt, lithium is under their sand, and they decide to use it for their own people instead. Okay. The low-hanging fruit has been consumed and remaining deposits are difficult to access. Wow, that's number 3. Number 4, exporting nations cut off exports to the U.S. as the form of leverage. Yeah, that can happen. 5, remaining deposits are under the control of geopolitical rivals. That happens. China and Russia. They seem to want to protect their resources. There's no longer sufficient diesel fuel to power the global supply chain of mining and transport and essential minerals. That's number 6. Number 7, supplies are available, but at prices that are unaffordable to American households with stagnant purchasing power. That's 7. Yeah. And most of us are stagnant right now. Number 8, having tired of neo-colonial exploitation in their national treasures, revolutionary governments expropriate developed world resource extraction assets and take control of extraction, limiting exports and sharply raising prices. Why not? Why not? Why be abused? And then now on the top here I say, call down fire, call down fire. That's a verse from the Bible. I'm saying do that against these Marxist globalists. Just call down fire, God. The problem is that doesn't work biblically, and I'll show you the verse in the next slide. So Greg Hunter's watchdog is saying, and this is Martin Armstrong, he's a very brilliant man, and he's saying that it's just going to get worse. And the points from his article are massive inflation, Chinese debt defaults, supply chain breakdowns. Russia is angry. China is hostile. Totalitarian governments, sociopathic tech giants, zombified people, and weather warfare. He's citing it all. And I'm just saying on the globalists, call down fire, call down fire. Well, I'm wrong. I'm sorry, it's the next slide after this. So I'm also saying evil never takes a vacation. It never sleeps. Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum says the Great Narrative Initiative and meeting in Dubai will be a powerful catalyst to shape contours of a more prosperous and inclusive future for rich humanity that is also more respectful of nature. No, it has nothing to do with nature because, as you can see on the left-hand side, you have all those private planes being flown into the Tower of Babel, and that's COP26. So I'm arguing that this is satanic, it's evil. I'm arguing that the players like Marina Abramovich are just Molech. I'm arguing that evil never takes a vacation, and they are pushing harder now than ever before. And these are the people that we compete against. I'm sorry, one more slide then. The greatest polluters preaching about pollution. So what I'm showing you is a slide showing how when you went to old COP sessions to talk about global warming and things like that, the private jets would put out X amount of emissions. Well, they almost doubled it this time, almost tripled it in some cases, total emissions going to Glasgow. It's saddening that they're preaching to us, the poor people, about wasting energy, and they're wasting so much energy. It's a Trojan horse, and they're basically vacuuming the top of smokestacks. They're not really accomplishing anything at all. So spirit cooking, Satanism, witchcraft, these people all play together. That's Lady Gaga on the left-hand side there with Marina Abramovich, and they are spirit cooking, which is a mental illness of eating flesh from humans and drinking the blood. And Bill Gates is part of it, and Jeffrey, I'm blanking on his name right now. It doesn't matter. You know who he is, Jeffrey the pedophile. Um, it's just sad. It's just sad. So here we're dealing with it. Luke 9:51 through 56. I say, call down fire, call down fire. Well, Jesus and the disciples were walking through from his northern home area, which is the Sea of Galilee and north and Nazareth and things like that. But to get back to Jerusalem, because it was time for him to die, he had to walk through Samaria. Well, so they approached him to be taken up to heaven, and he made his decision to set out for Jerusalem. He sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village in Shomron to make preparations for him, but this is in Samaria. However, the people there would not let him stay because his destination was Jerusalem. When his Talmudim, his disciples, Yaakov, which is James, and Yochanan, John, saw this, they said, Sir, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them? But he turned and rebuked them, which he would with me too, because I'm saying just call down fire. And he went on to another village. So there's another time for this. So what I'm telling you is, I don't get to call down fire, nor do you. Death is coming. How do you cope with that much death? I don't know how you deal with it. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, there's acceptance. But nearly 2 billion deaths is what is slated in the chapter 6 of Revelation in the fourth horseman. So this is one person that dealt with death and dealt with wretchedness very, very well. So please take her advice. So this is Corrie ten Boom. She watched her sister die, and she was stuck in a concentration camp, watching people beat people, and her sister was Betsy. That's it. Yep. And the Nazi guards were horrific to them. She wasn't raped because she had lice. Think about that. The blessing is lice, and that keeps you from being raped. So she lived through it. Her sister died. They protected Jews. We're going into this time frame. Corey is also the person that flew over Arkansas, southern Missouri there, and looked down and said, that's a safe zone. That's a safe place when we come up to whatever we're coming up to. So take her advice. I would recommend just buying the book and handing it out to your friends, and maybe having a book study and a Bible study too, because it's a very religious book. And she was not a religious person. She just had deep faith. She was very charismatic, wonderful, wonderful person. So, or get the movie, The Hiding Place. That's a wonderful movie too. So just keep it in mind that this is how you get through with greater faith. And what you want to do is when something good happens, praise God for it, and try not to fixate on the horrible things that are coming. As always, I say we're in the birth pangs, we're in the seals right now, we're seeing the fulfillment of the third seal, but more will happen too. And then the fourth seal, which we've talked about. Then the tribulation starts after that, then greater tribulation. And what if the end times lasts a long time? Ugh. You know, what if this goes on for a long period of time and we just keep on going and going and going? I don't know. We'll just have to try to get through. I have some new news on Seal 1, and it came from Israel, which is interesting. So, according to, I think it's Bennett, he said, the progressives are at war with the West. And I argued that for years now, but then I also mentioned it to one of my friends who was a college professor that started his professorship in the 60s, 67, 68, that time frame. And I said, okay, so describe teaching to kids from 67, 68, and what you see today. And he said, it was getting worse during the 60s, but now it's just absolutely bonkers. And they're like zombies right now. You know, I wouldn't want to go to a college campus anymore. I don't go back to my alma mater. Seal 2 is warfare. The second seal is east of Jerusalem, all of those Bush Cheney wars. 1991, H.W. Bush starts a war with Iraq. 2001, W. Bush and Cheney start the second war. Then we have Arab Spring in 2011. So we have 1991, 2001, 2011. Every 10 years, it just increases in the warfare, we'll call it. SEAL 3, you're seeing it. You're seeing the food prices go up, and they'll just get worse. Supply chain issues, lots of issues. Those compare with the Matthew 24 linear birth pangs. So you should see the first seal in the ethnos, ethnics versus ethnics. You should see the second seal in the kingdom versus kingdom. You should see the third seal, and there will be famines, limo. Then the fourth seal, you should see plagues, which is limoi. Both of those are kind of third, fourth sealish. And then quakes come after that. The fifth seal is martyrdom, and we're starting to see more martyrdom and more death. The fourth seal we've talked about. The fifth seal is martyrdom. The sixth seal is a ways off yet. If you want to study something intriguing, check out some of the scenes from 1833 as the meteorite shower hit northern Niagara Falls area of New York. And there were three groups. They were technically not completely formed at that point in time, but there are the Millerites, which became the SDAs in most cases. You have the Jehovah's Witnesses. They didn't really officially form until 1859, but they were in the region at that point in time. And then you have the Mormons, and they took off after that. But they all saw this and said, that's the sixth seal. And so it really kicked off that fervency of inaccurate date setting. It's just interesting to notice that, because that is one of the greatest asteroid disasters we've ever experienced. We are going to have the players. So don't think it's just the Antichrist, and don't think it's whatever. It's the Antichrist plus the false prophet plus Gog plus the king angel of the Abuso, which is the fifth trumpet from Revelation 9. And then you've got the horse-like locusts that come out, same Revelation chapter 9, 1 through 12. And then you've got 2 million cavalry soldiers from the sixth trumpet, which is chapter 9 later on. That's the second woe. So keep in mind, the Illuminati are involved in this. Wicked humans are involved. There's just so many different evil players. There are good players too, so be a good player. The 144,000 are good. The two witnesses are good. The Kedoshim, we call them, the Hagios, which are earthborn people that are just good, godly people. You'll have angels and archangels involved. You'll have also the in-between ones. So we're fighting for their salvation too. So just keep in mind, there are these times when you want to reach out to people, when they're willing to talk to you about things. And if things get worse, they'll start talking. And so this is interesting because God promises to separate people. That's the end of Malachi. I think it's 3:18. And then it also, in some ways, you could argue Ezekiel 34. The leftists support tyranny, the conservatives do not. It's time to separate. Well, Brendan Smith might be right there. So according to Dr. Zev again, programmed genocide is going on. There's gene therapy going on. There are food riots. There's extinction level events that seem to be coming our direction. There are greater fears, greater confusion. The slave overlords are talking about benevolent slavery for us. Here's the comment about Australia. Dan and Andrew Stan. So his name is Andrews, and now they call Australia Dan Andrew Stan. And they also call it Victoria, that area, Victopia. And they're trying to turn it into a utopia, but they're taking away people's rights. They describe us as oxygen suckers. Keep your garments clean, people. Keep your faith. Be prepared for a wedding It's not going to be a quick, easy case. It's going to take time. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for a long haul, and be prepared to keep your faith the whole way through. Good night. God bless. Bye-bye.